Hey, Jem here. I was born and raised on Gadigal land before moving to Meanjin with my family, where I spent most of my childhood and young adulthood. For most of my life, though, I've lived in Naarm, and this is where I consider my home to be. The traditional custodians on the land that I'm currently on in Melbourne, Victoria, are the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to elders past and present, and I also acknowledge First Nations people as the first teachers and leaders in this country.
You're listening to Eat the Principles with Jem Kolber.
Welcome everyone to the second episode of Eat the Principles. I am Jem Kolber. I'm an experienced Victorian secondary school teacher and leader, and I think I might also want to be a principal. And as a way of forcing principals, mainly women, some men, to mentor and develop me, I've created this podcast as a way of spending time with them. They're leaders I admire, and I want to unpack what it is exactly that makes them good leaders. And I intend on consuming these strengths and qualities and absorbing them into my own being to become the ultimate principal. And of course, share what I've learned with other aspiring leaders. So as of today, we've got 190 views on YouTube, which is amazing. I know that's not a lot of views in YouTube land, but really I just made this podcast for myself, and if one other person would listen and find it useful, then that makes me happy. So thank you for listening, thank you for sharing, and thank you for recommending other principals. I have a massive long list of mainly women principals that I need to chase down for this pod, so please continue to do so. Today I'm chatting with Dr. Briony Scott. Welcome, Dr. Briony Scott.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
Now, today is the first time that we have ever met, so we don't have any history together. And I just want to talk a little bit about how I came across your name. So, for my first episode, I interviewed my one of my first mentors in school, and she's someone who's really close to my heart. And it was really important to start my podcast with Michelle Crofts. And then I said to my husband, so Stephen Kolber, whom I think you might have met him at Teach Meet, and
Yes,
you've presented together before, and he has kind of made it his life goal to know everyone who works in the education space at some point, either on the internet or in real life. And when I said to him, okay, for my second guest, I want them to be a really big deal. They need to be a woman and they need to be a really big deal. And he said, without hesitation at all, Dr. Briony Scott, you have to do Dr. Briony Scott. And I'm like, okay, great. Give me her email. I'll email her. And then you didn't respond to that because you're really, really busy. And then I hassled you on LinkedIn, and then eventually you responded to my email, and here we are today. And allow me to just fangirl for a second, because I didn't realise how much of a big deal you were, and I know you're going to be humble about it, but you have got your own Wikipedia page. In fact, you're mentioned on other Wikipedia pages. You have been a panellist on Q&A. You write regularly for newspapers. So I am just so stoked to have you as my second guest on my podcast. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I have no idea about the Wikipedia thing. The rest, though, is like most principals. We have strong opinions on things, right? So given the opportunity, put a microphone in front of us, we'll be like, yeah, well, this is what I think, So there are wonderful opportunities, I think, as a principal and senior leaders in education to speak up about matters that are happening to everyone. It doesn't matter who you meet. They've got an experience, or they have a child that they're dealing or grappling with or trying to understand. And it's the ultimate connection, really. So to be able to talk with people about what matters to them, it's a privilege. It's an extraordinary privilege.
Awesome. So let's introduce you to our listeners, and we're going to do that by finishing these sentences. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Go.
Okay. I am a principal at
Wenona, which is a girls' school in Sydney, and
Right.
only till the end of the year, and then I'm wrapping up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know, right?
Where are you going to?
That's not on the questions. I have no idea.
Okay. Sorry, that wasn't on my question list.
I literally have no idea. I'm there going, I'm going to get offline, because principals, when they wrap up at a school, need to walk away and let the next leadership do it completely. So I'm going away. So I'm going to go to try and go and see the Northern Lights.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a little bit cold, but it's the time of year, and I'm just like, yep, I'm going to do it.
Oh my God, that's so exciting.
Great fun.
That's awesome. Okay, sorry, I just
No, I love it. I love it.
I veered away from my questions. I've been a principal for...
Look, at Wenona, 14 years, at another school before this, Roseville, for 5 years. So 19 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right? I don't look a day over 40, do I?
You don't. You actually don't. Not that there's anything wrong with growing old and looking older.
It's a privilege.
Aren't we lucky to grow old?
We are.
Prior to that, I was
I've done a couple of things. I was obviously a teacher. I have, what have I done? I worked as a systems analyst with Olivetti, which is where I learnt about computers and technology. I had a lot of fun. That was Olivetti International, so I lived overseas for a while. But while I was there, the other thing I've done is worked as an ambulance driver with the Wheaton Rescue Squad, which is in America. I lived in America for a while, and you can volunteer to work on the ambulances or on the rescue squads. And so I did that, which I absolutely and utterly loved as well. Completely different.
Wow. How interesting, because I often think of teachers and people who work in education as being really calm people, and that they would actually those kind of skills would transfer really well to the medical world, to staying cool and calm under pressure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, how interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I've also got two extra little finish these sentences that I didn't tell you about.
Yeah, go.
I have a doctorate in...
The most boring subject. I can make your eyes glaze over in about 2 nanoseconds. I did my doctorate when I was at home raising kids, and so wasn't really in a position to do field research or anything. So it's all in policy. So I can bore you really quickly on, and it's all around. It's all around parental choice, and the parents have this universal right to educate children the way they want to, in the faith or the philosophy that they want. And they also have the right to a state-funded education, but you can't actually afford both. So the one thing about a doctoral thesis is you're meant to know the answer, right? Yep. And I did the one thing which actually it's impossible. You cannot... we don't have the resources for these two conflicting rights. So how do you then make the choice? And at what point does a parent not have the right to go, well, I want this particular philosophy in this particular suburb doing this particular... It's like, we can't keep funding... We can't fund individual choice. That actually is your right as a parent to educate the child the way. So... there was no answer to it.
There was no answer.
But it was a really complicated question, and so that kept me busy for a couple of years.
For sure. Sorry, one more finish these. Actually, I've got two more finish these sentences. So one I didn't tell you about, and then the one that you did know about. I don't include the doctor in front of my name on LinkedIn because...
That's a really good question. No obvious reason. I did when Twitter was Twitter and not X. I'm not on X anymore. My whole thing got taken over by somebody in Canada, and I have no access to any of it on Twitter.
Oh wow!
But Julia Baird, who's obviously a journalist and basically a social commentator these days as well, talked about how women used to get harassed for putting their doctor in front of their name, and so encouraged everyone or females on Twitter who were doctors to put it. So I put it on Twitter. Yeah. And I just never got around to it. No huge philosophical reason.
Okay. Just interested to know. One book that was pivotal to my journey as a principal is...
Well, here's the thing about books. Sometimes I find education quite boring. Right? Like there's a lot of talking about the same issues, the same things. So in fact, I read a lot of non-educational books, and in a whole lot of different disciplines, for the purposes of appropriating what they're learning into a school type environment. And I find that really interesting. So when I read books about how does elite sports teams work, and I go, well, how does that play out here? Why is it that if you're an Olympic water polo player, you want to have as many different coaches around you telling you what you've got to do to get better, But if I'm an Olympic teacher, I get deeply offended if someone tells me that I need to do my job better. Like, the concept of coaching is just like, would never do it. And I'm like, I don't understand these disconnects, right? I look at architecture and I look at the philosophy around how do you design things for purpose. And then I look at our schools that look like prison cells, going all the time. And I'm really interested in what happens elsewhere. This is a long-winded answer to...
No, yep. Love it.
My favourite authors is a gentleman, another doctor called Atul Gawande, but he's a surgeon and a general physician in America. And he writes for the New Yorker. He writes beautifully, like I And so he talks a lot about, I think doctors are quite similar to teachers, not all teachers, but enough teachers where they are often king of all they survey. People can't really tell them what to do. And so when I look at, well, how does a doctor get better at what they do, other than practicing? How do they reflect? Do they listen to coaches? I don't think so much, So then I go, well, how does this work in a school system? So I got into reading a lot about Atul Gawande's work, which is all around how do you bring around improvements in hospital systems. And I think hospital systems, I'm a long-winded answer, but I'm getting to the book.
No, great, love it.
Really interesting because they also have this influx of patients or this influx of people, and then they kind of leave, which is what schools do. Or we have them for longer, and it's a bit more of a moving feast. But I think hospitals are a similar ecosystem in some respects to schools. So he wrote this book called The Checklist Manifesto. And I love this book. It changed the way, that's the one. Changed the way I viewed the complexity of school ecosystems. They are breathtakingly complex. And people who don't know about schools and how you run it, it's very easy to go, you should just do this and you should do that. And I was listening to Federer's graduation speech that he gave quite recently, where he talks about how hard it is to make things look easy. And I think that's often the case in schools, that we make it look easy, but it is breathtakingly complex.
Yeah.
And the idea behind the Checklist Manifesto is that when things become too complex for one brain or for one team, by doing something as simple as creating checklists, you actually take the cognitive load off those, particularly those in leadership, so that you are able to focus on things when they actually go wrong or that were genuinely unpredictable, versus the things that are dramas because we're disorganised or we just didn't get around to it because we've had 27 other things happening that day.
Totally.
And he goes through it, and because he's a kind of a sociological, he does it through a sociological framework too. He looks at it mostly through pilots. And he goes, it is now so complex to fly modern planes that you have to have a checklist to remember, or not even to remember, to trigger the process that goes, yes, I've checked the fuel, yes, I've checked the wings, yes, I've checked this, and off it goes. Because you can no longer one person cannot rely on their ability to remember or understand everything that's going on. And I think that's true in schools too.
Yeah, totally. So I hadn't read anything by Atul Gawande before, and so this is the first time I'd read one of his books.
Yeah.
And I have to tell you that I first started trying to read it when I was eating lunch, and it starts with a really graphic emergency department scene. So I put it aside and then thought, okay, this isn't one to read while I'm snacking on something. And so I found it really interesting that he comes from the medical industry, but then also he delves into kind of architecture, like massive building works, and then he also goes into the aviation industry that you've already mentioned. And you've already kind of said, I mean, the main takeaway is that when things get complex, and you're right, schools are totally complex because we're full of human beings, and humans aren't robots, and teachers and principals aren't robots, and students aren't robots. That coming back to that idea of the checklist is really important. And in fact, that, when they first brought some of those checklists into the aviation industry in 1935, like their crash rates went down, and they've improved surgery recovery rate and all that kind of stuff with checklists and stuff like that. And I went through and I've highlighted a few bits and pieces that that kind of stood out to me. And I suppose my key takeaway from this book mainly is about, well, how do we work in schools when it is increasingly complex? And it's not about one person with one checklist. So it's very much about the whole team, and not just the team working together, but communicating really effectively and introducing themselves to each other and knowing each other and how each other works. And that was super important as well.
Yes, I think that's right. And I mean, I look at schools, and this week alone, I have had 2 suicide attempts. I've had one set of parents who are just beside themselves with life. I've got a teacher who's, fleeing a domestic violence relationship. Right? And I've got 2 or 3 of them have got cancer. I've got 2 parents who are dying. And in a school of 1,400, this is normal community life. Like, there is nothing any different than what I'm going through than any community of this size would be going through. But also we have a tour morning, we have an enrolment day, we have scholarship exams, we have these events, right? And the problem is that if they all have equal input on you, like, what's going to drop, you're going to miss something, you're going to run the tour morning. In fact, I shouldn't confess this on air, but we did have a cracker of a moment in term 1.
I can edit it out if you like.
I mean, I hope that this gives people some solace, where we literally ran a parent information evening on one of our junior school programs, and the teachers forgot to turn up, right? The parents were there, had the wine.
Oh, wow.
And we're just like, there is so much happening. And we were going through our massive registration and accreditation inspections every 5 years in our school system. They're enormous. And so you have to be able, if you think of your brain as like a cognitive bank account, you cannot do it all. It's like on a tennis court and the tennis machine is just going out of control, flinging things at you. And everything's important. But of course the suicide attempts are going to be that dominate you. Well, I'm not thinking about, well, have we got a program yet for the parent event on Friday night? And so you just kind of go, you have to be able to, particularly in leadership, you have to have the brain space to be able to think about things when they come at you that are unexpected. And if you're chock-a-block going, we haven't ordered the programs, we haven't done this, we haven't done that, if I can put it all down on a checklist and then that gets delegated out, then they report back, then all of a sudden my brain is 20% less. And so I can deal with the things that I didn't expect or I didn't see coming down the pipeline. Because I've now got more capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm one of those people who, if something occurs to me, something that I need to do, I need to get it out of my brain. Otherwise, it will just go in circles, because my brain's going, don't forget that thing you need to do. And so, I mean, my strategy is to email myself usually. And so my husband always jokes about the really random subject headings that will appear in my emails. Sometimes he even says, this one says Stephen ? What does that even mean?
I think the thing about the checklist concept, though, is that it's something that can be used every time. So if after, for an example, you have an event or something that happens at the school, to sit down for 5 minutes and go, well, what did we miss? What did we forget? I forgot to invite the teachers. Okay, let's put that on the checklist. And then you don't think about it again until the event comes around. So you're not reinventing the wheel every year. You're improving on it, but you're not. It's not just, well, this is in my brain, I've got to get it out. There's also a sense of like, well, here's the checklist. Have I worked my way through the checklist so that I'm now free to do my job? And that is the gold. The fact that it can be used again, it can be updated, reviewed, whatever, and then you come back and go, yep, tick, 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 all done. We're ready to go.
Great. And so it sounds to me like your checklists are about prioritization and then also about just getting everything on that list and then figuring out delegating, basically. So who to do things on the list. Is that kind of what one of your lists look like?
For me, from a checklist point of view, because I'm a principal, I've been a principal now for a while. So my role is now very strongly looking at the next generation and going, how do you not burn out? Okay, because the demands that are on those going into leadership are insatiable. And if you don't have boundaries in place, if you don't have mechanisms in place where you are looking after yourself and you are protected. It's all very well to say people shouldn't give us that much work, or they do, right? That's the reality. Schools are insatiable beasts.
Yep.
They are, more than ever, they are the hub of our community. They are the place where people go to when things go wrong. And so for me, if a child dies, I go from 5 to 18-year-old. If a child dies up to 5 years after they've left school, the parents will come back to the school because we are their community hub. They don't go to church, they don't have extended families, they're not members of Rotary, like all of those things that used to be in place are no longer in place. So the demands where you become marriage counsellor, financial counsellor, helping people with addiction, helping people with abuse, helping people go through just an extraordinary array of things. That is insatiable. And we can complain about it and throw our toys out of the cot and go, that's wrong. But the measure of this leadership in these places is that you have to work out a way of doing this without burning out. So for me, I look at these things like checklists and I go, it might seem like it takes you a long time to do that, but once you have done it, you have bought yourself time. It's invaluable, because we have this saying around here, no drama, Obama. It was the theme of Obama's electoral campaign when he was up against Hillary Clinton a number of years ago. No drama, Obama. We do not do drama. And when people and parents or other people come to us with their drama, and that's contagious, and you feel your heart rate go up. And by and large, people who are in education are just lovely, highly empathetic, really kind people. So we are mirroring and feeling it and taking responsibility for it more than just about any other person in any other profession, right? And we are so committed to these young people and to their families, because that's such a crucial part of it. We have to be able to work out ways where we don't get sucked in. So what are those things? So a checklist is one thing. I know it sounds weird, but it just creates a bit of space. And then there are these other measures that go, okay, we've got a whole bunch of parents coming tomorrow, or we've got the school event happening tomorrow, and we've done nothing about it. That now becomes a drama, right? And so up goes the heart rate, up goes everything, and we want to do well, and we're all closet perfectionists, and, even though we tell everyone else not to be, and we tell everyone else often fail, forward, all that sort of stuff, but we don't, because we're perfect. And so we kind of raise this bar on ourselves, and I go, what can you do to minimise that last-minute drama? Now, things are still going to happen, but if in good faith you can go hand on heart, I have done what I can, and that's also something that's my job at my age, to help younger people go, what your definition of success is what again? Is it that you're going to not blow up when the tennis ball machine is just flying 50,000 tennis balls at you? Well, I can't help you. You're going to fail. You may as well just accept it. If that's your definition of success, then, getting every ball back over the net, it's not going to happen. It's just not. So it's pick and choose, what you're prepared to accept that you just cannot do. And so a big part of that for me is helping people with strategies to minimise what they've got to do, or all they think they've got to do, because a lot of it they don't actually have to do. And then the second part is then, how do you teach a person to de-escalate themselves? How do you teach a person to de-escalate others? It's actually really hard to do. And particularly for people in education who tend to, by and large, be curriculum specialists, in all other respects, jack of all trades and master of none. So you have to be able to kind of accommodate things that other people get incredibly well trained for, you know, and we're just there going, okay, so what do we do when the kids attempted suicide in front of us again, you know?
Yep.
What do we do? You know,
Yep.
we're just kind people who are stepping in and not looking away. There's a lot that's expected of people on the front line, which is what I think teachers are these days.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
That's a long answer. Yeah.
Yeah, no. And lots of things that I could pick up on there. And I've heard you talk about well-being, and we're probably going to get into that a little bit with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 protocol, and we'll do that in a second.
Yeah.
But you know, that idea of schools being insatiable beasts, and I've heard you say, you know, if you were to fall down dead at school, someone would step over your dead body and continue what you were doing.
Blunt when I said that, but that does sound like me. Yeah.
But it is true. It is true. And kind of, I mean, we do have a teacher shortage at the moment, so kind of teachers aren't really replaceable, but we essentially are replaceable. And, you know,
the burnout is unnecessary,
Yeah.
right? And the problem, one of the challenges you've got is that you have really good people who think that their definition of success is to meet everybody's needs. And if the needs are insatiable, and frankly at times if the needs are unreasonable, and I'm not talking actually about workload, because I think most teachers are actually quite capable of juggling their workload. I'm talking about the emotional expectations in terms of dealing with students and their families that are at a different level than anything I have seen in my career. And I do think part of this is post-COVID, but I also think there's a little psych term, but the concept of projection, that I have a problem and therefore you're going to fix it for me, or you're the problem. I think that is as high as I've ever seen it. And because you've got teachers who by and large do want people to be happy and will do it, all of a sudden they're doing things that are actually really quite unreasonable. Which is not to say we all want to alleviate people's suffering, or we want to alleviate their grief. We want everyone to be happy. It's not actually our job to tap dance and to entertain and to make people happy and well and perfect. Kids come from dysfunctional families. Kids come from situations that are complex. And the expectation that somehow schools and teachers will be all things to all people, when predominantly we are not trained in this, and those expectations are unrealistic, I go, yeah, like, to what end? And I'm not talking about those lazy people who just kind of go, oh, well, I work too hard. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about actually what I consider to be 80% of people who actually genuinely really take it personally when someone in front of them is upset or hurt, struggling. And I get it, like I'm one of them, you know. So it's, you know, any time a child leaves this school because you're the worst principal ever, I mean, you know, I go home and beat myself up about that, you know. Of course, right? So, but I also think that's what makes you good. But we just have to get real around at what cost? At what cost? What is real around this? And there is no knight in shining armour. There's no government policy that's going to change this. There's no school culture that's going to magically reform. There's no way of going to parents and going, actually, this is on you. Like, this, you're going to have to do something here. We can support you and we will, but this is on you. So one of the things I talk about is, when I listen to you quote me back, and I think I'm probably a little more dramatic now in the language that I use, but I talk about like schools that like this vortex of doom. yes, a little more dramatic. You throw everything into it. You can throw your marriage, you can throw your health, you can throw your time, you can throw your energy, and you will never sate the beast. Okay. So the reality is there are boundaries that we all put around this vortex already. We just put them too close. So we do sleep at night. I mean, some nights we struggle and we've got things, but we do actually go home and we do actually have a meal, and we do put the boundaries in. We're just putting it too close to the edge. We then kind of go and work for hours, or we work at least one day on the weekend. Like I don't know a time where that's not been kind of quite common, and so you just kind of go, well, we just have to put the boundaries back a bit further. and so that we actually have at least a Sabbath on the weekend, at least one day where we do zero work. And even the second day, it's like, well, yeah, sure, prepare for the Monday perhaps, because I've never known a time where I haven't done that.
Yep.
So it would be rich for me to be critical. But then the next one that I use in this example is, for some people actually weekend is their time to do the work. So I get all that, right?
Yep.
And I'm not lecturing people on how to do their lives. What I will say is I remember reading an article many years ago about the Daintree, and that it was one of the most complex ecosystems in the world, and everything was so reliant on everything else within this system for survival. And if I walked into the Daintree, I'd just go, wow, look at this, it's so lush, it's so green, it's so beautiful, it's like this Atul, but I'd be kind of admiring it. But someone who is trained can walk in there, see exactly what I see, but also go, oh no, actually this is out of balance, this is out of whack. And apparently one of the first ways that they know that it's out of whack is that the green tree frog disappears. So that's the first sign that everything is out of kilter. So I then go to people in education who are, and not everyone will resonate with the way I'm speaking, but for those who do, and you know who you are, what is your green tree frog? Like, what's your thing that when that stops, you go, oh, okay, well, I can explain it for 1 week because we had parent-teacher interviews for 3 afternoons that went through to late o'clock at night. So I couldn't get to yoga. I can't do yoga, so I'm using that as an example. But it's now been 3 weeks and I haven't gone back, so that your green tree frog's disappeared, right? And you're feeling fine. You're feeling great. You've got the adrenaline high of being in the first part of the term. Life is good. You've got a beautiful letter from a year 8 kid who thinks you're wonderful. Everything is good. It looks fine, but it's not. Because your green tree frog is disappeared.
Green tree, it's gone.
So you go, what is your green tree frog? What is your thing that slows you down, that grounds you? And look, I'm not into group hugs. Believe me, massive introvert. I believe in personal space. I'm not getting woo here on you, but I go, you have got to have something, because if you don't, you'll be throwing yourself into that vortex of doom before you even know it. You just get sucked into it. So it sounds brutal, but I go, that's on us. There is no one outside of education. How can they begin to understand genuinely the stuff that we deal with, the stuff that comes down the pipeline, really? They just can't. So it's unfair to say, you should rescue us, you should do this, you should do that. If you just did that, if you treated us with respect, it just doesn't happen, right? So I go, in the meantime, maybe it'll happen one day. Brilliant. Someone else can work on that one. In the meantime, I go, for those who are in my orbit, how can I say to them, you are doing an exceptional job. You are so good at what you do. I'm not saying you're perfect. No, I don't want you to be perfect. Perfect weird working in a school. I want there to be failures. I want kids to see you engaging in self-deprecating humour, or looking like a goose because you've dressed up, as I did once, as a sunflower. The whole thing is what is your definition of success here? And if it's to work until you drop, then we'll step over the body and move on. But perhaps there's a better way of doing all of this. And I think there has to be. It's a sustainable thing, and if people have got a problem with that, then they can fire me and find someone else. But what I would rather do is stay in the profession.
You're leaving anyway.
Only this one school. I don't know what all the lights, and I'll work it out. But it matters that people are wise about the nature of this job. And the thing that really interests me is that if I were a nurse or a psychologist who gets clinical supervision for some of the stuff they deal with, a policeman sees some of the things I see, and he gets or she gets supervision, gets counselling. Teachers, no, you just keep going. You just keep going, and you see it all. You're on the front line, and I go, okay, what are we going to do about that? That's what matters. Yeah, and that's why I think the Checklist Manifesto is an interesting book, because it talks about equally complex ecosystems. I think without the personal expectations that are placed sometimes on those in education, but it does allow us to go, okay, what can we learn about this complex ecosystem, and what can we do about that?
Great. I'm interested to know, what's your green tree frog?
At the moment, I actually have a granddaughter. And I mean, hopefully I have it for life, but she's only just arrived.
Yeah.
And
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Your first grandchild?
First one, yeah.
Beautiful.
And what I am finding is that she is my green tree frog. That I slow right down when I'm with her. She points out a flower, a bird, a plane. She wants to go outside. And I have no choice, and nor do I want her to see me online, answering emails, checking my phone. No, it all goes right away. I slow right down, and I love that. I love it. It just reminds me. And it's things like that. For me, family is probably my main green tree frog, like if I hang just with them.
Yep.
But when people come at me and they're loading and firing because I've done something to ruin their lives, I am reminded that they don't know the middle names of my children, anything about me, so they can't actually hurt me.
Yeah, right.
And so if they can't actually hurt me, then I'm very happy to have a conversation with them about anything. But also, I'm not going to do the drama. I'm good. Really happy to help people navigate through something. Not about to take responsibility for their dramas. And so I have that buffer that I always remember. And then for me personally, being able to hang with my granddaughter out in nature has just proven to be a very natural way for me to help ground me and de-escalate when I start ramping up.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. I think my boys might be my green tree frog as well.
Yeah.
My 3-year-old and my 1-year-old, and I know that when I get in my head and I'm stressed and I've got too much to do, then I don't, I'm on my phone and I'm not really paying attention when I'm with them.
Yep.
And I'm not listening to the birds. I'm not listening to that currawong that's just landed on my fence. That my 3-year-old, he knows the difference between a minor bird, a currawong, and a crow and a magpie now.
Yeah.
So just that kind of bringing you back to the moment. And I'm one of those who racing ahead, planning, trying to control everything. But coming back to that moment to moment is, I think that might be my green tree frog too.
One of the interesting things is that gift that you have to go a long way down the decision tree at speed, and it is a gift, it's an extraordinary gift, is also your Achilles heel.
Yeah.
Right? So
how is it my gift? Because I've only ever thought that it's like, it's not a good quality.
It's a great quality. It's a fantastic quality to be able to shoot off down a decision tree, down all the branches, and to explore the what ifs before that little spot fire becomes a bushfire. No, it's a phenomenal gift. It's like playing chess. It's like the ability to think strategically, test things, question things. Now, the only thing is that if that becomes all-consuming, then you're living off in la-la land while the reality is here. And so then how do you come back and go, because the gift is not just that you're out there, but that you can move between the two worlds. And so, no, I think it's a phenomenal gift, but it burns you out, right? Yeah. So you have to, and I don't think you're alone in this. I think I think education attracts different types of people, and one of the core attributes are these people who do have the ability to be highly empathetic, really very clever, kind of going down, mulling on, well, if this person's thinking and saying that, then what does that mean down there, that sort of stuff. But it will undo you if it's in check.
Okay, talking about well-being and boundaries and being wise and all those things, looking after yourself, self-care, green tree frog.
Yes.
Let's get practical with my 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 protocol, if you're ready.
Okay, let me just, because I actually wrote some of these down. All right.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Briony Scott.
Yes.
Can you tell me 5 things in your office or desk or work bag that are crucial to doing your job?
You should do the camera around and just go.
Yes, and this is your office, isn't it?
This is my office, yeah. So, okay, the first one's really daggy. Fresh flowers, even if it's a flower, just from anywhere. And my mother said to me, real ladies have real flowers, and so having said that, the ones just here are silk, but it's I do like flowers. It just brings nature indoors. Anyway, sorry, 5.
Beautiful.
Keys, an enormous bunch of keys, because
Yes.
the more important you are, the more keys you have.
Yes.
And I literally, I can't tell you, I use 2 of them. I use the key tag to get into my office, and then I've got a master key that gets me in everywhere. And I actually have no idea what the other 30 keys are for, but they're all in this key room, so do something with it. I have a journal, and the journal is problematic in the sense that I only ever, people like, you should journal, learn things. The problem for me is that when I'm happy, I never journal. Miserable or grumpy or really annoyed, then I do journal. And so I actually have to throw them out, because I have visions that if I ever get hit by a bus one day,
someone's going to stumble across a journal where you're really cranky.
Miserable cow on the planet. Look at this stuff. And I'm like, actually, no, I'm really happy, but I only ever write negative things, So I do have a journal, but writing for me also slows me down, so I find that helpful. My phone, which goes with me everywhere, I've got a boarding school, so I am 24/7 on that, and it's got emails and everything. Oh, and then the other thing that I've got in my office that I've had now for a couple of terms is I've got a jigsaw in place. And that's been such a good thing. So when kids are in trouble, and they're up with the principal, or something's complex and we need to talk, I have found that sitting them around a jigsaw table, it just means that we're focusing on the jigsaw. And it has been a game changer. Kids just come in and they sit and they talk about just about anything. So I'm loving the jigsaw in my office.
Where did you get that idea from?
I don't know. It just came, and it's worked. It's really worked. So,
Well, in a day and age where, fidget spinners are like lots of people need them.
But this is also just a way of speaking and listening to a young person talk without it being, you're in trouble, what's the answer to this question, what's the answer to that question, or what were you thinking, or how are you feeling? And it's like, no, can you just do the corner edge there? There's bright pink, there's only 4 pieces, you must be able to solve that one.
How many pieces is it?
I do 1,000, and I don't do really complicated puzzles, so they've got to have... There's got to be a sense of, I found 3 pieces and then the session's over, that kind of deal.
Okay, all right. And what pictures are they that you're putting together?
We've just done the circular one for inspirational women, we did a whole series of inspirational women. That was really good fun. And now I've got, I don't know what, it's an artwork.
What happens to them once they're done?
I send them up to the library.
Okay.
So then other kids can do them up there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, what a fascinating idea. I love that. Okay, 4. What are 4 daily practices that make you a leader?
Look, I found this one quite hard because I'm not really great at daily practices. What I'm trying to do is practice slow leading, and partly this has been, so I guess it's a form of meditation, but it's a way of just going, do not react, do not do drama, just learning how to de-escalate others.
Is this also being in the adult mode as well? Because I've heard you talking about adult mode and child mode.
Absolutely, parent, adult, child. Yes, transactional analysis. Absolutely. And it's that ability when someone, and it can be like, a barrister who's stomping their feet and crossing their arms and how dare you put my kid on detention, who's actually acting like a child. And the tendency is to either stomp your feet and react back, your child's obnoxious, so let's start there, or to go, you go into parent mode, which is like, well, these are the rules of the school, you've got to deal with it, And the question is, can you get them, to a point where they de-escalate, you meet them as an adult and you talk, well, she did throw rotten tomatoes at someone who was walking by, right? So let's talk that through, And so can we have that adult conversation is a big part of it. So I think slow leading is something that I'm learning about, practicing. I've not seen it written anywhere, but in my head, that's what I'm trying to do, right? And so part of that, and I guess is the second one, is that practicing de-escalation, practicing it with myself, and look, and I do an appalling job sometimes. I really can ruminate along with the best of them. But that sense of can you just have a calm and happy and secure community where when things erupt, they're the anomaly. They're not, someone's world gets complicated. It's not a common thing. being very present with my family is really important. So you can see the common themes kind of coming out. It is very, very important to me that I do not lose my family because I have 1,000 other families who want to fix their world. That's an overstatement, but it's that sense of it's really important that I am disciplined around what really matters to me. And then connection, and this is what I'm trying to do is every day is just, even if it's a text with a friend or a text with someone, it's an easy thing. I've got a gorgeous husband, so it's easy to connect with him, but he gets really busy too, you know. So
he also has his own Wikipedia page.
he's got his own dramas. So just recognising, I think that connection is not something that happens by magic. You actually have to overtly go out and connect. And even if it's just sending a message to a friend going, this is what I'm doing today, what are you doing? I'll sometimes do that in the car on the way home from work. I'll just phone someone up and go, you know, how's your day? So those are the 4 probably that I'm just focusing. They're all kind of the same, but there's the focus for me at the moment.
And it's interesting that they're not necessarily about you doing principal work in a school.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Fascinating.
The principal stuff, I mean, you can read that in a book, you know. Yeah. It's there are lots of books on leadership and principal leadership and stuff. This is a different type of leadership. This is or a different way of being. It's recognising, I think, that schools are no longer just responsible for their immediate community. They are the community in society. And so what does that look like? What does a societal leader look like rather than a school leader?
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Which kind of like leads into the 3, because that's 3 ways of looking after yourself.
Yes.
Because we know that principals cop a lot of abuse. They have got a really stressful job. Yeah. We know that if you take on a principal's job, you are essentially shortening your lifespan because of the stress.
Yes.
You know, so how do you look after yourself? You've done it for a long time now, so you obviously are looking after yourself and you haven't burnt out.
Oh, no, I have at different times. I've just started better. Yeah. And I have got better at it. Like you learn every time it happens, you get better at going, okay, well, what are you going to do this time? Because I love the job. You see, that's the problem. So if I want to stay here, what I have done in my career is really a series of experiments around, well, what can I do that will enable me to stay in this role? And so for me now, I go to the gym 3 mornings a week, and I rarely miss that. I've got a trainer, which I know is an indulgence, but if I didn't, I mean, I'm a woman of a certain age. It's very easy for me. I'm also inherently lazy and conservative, believe in conserving energy. So it helps me to sit on there just even for half an hour, go, come on, like we're going to weights and do this sort of stuff. But the physical side of things is important to me and becomes very increasingly important as I get older. I also have coaching. So about 2 or 3 years ago, I organised to meet with someone, and it came out of recognising that psychologists have clinical supervision. I actually think principals need clinical supervision too. The thing about clinical supervision is that it's actually not mentoring. It's all about, well, how did you react in this situation? Why did you react that way? So it's not trying to fix the situation. It's analysing yourself about, well, why did you do that? Why did you respond that way? And would you do it differently? Why would you do it differently? And so I've learnt a lot from that, and I do 2 weeks or so on that, which has been fantastic. And then for me, how I look after myself is I'm a massive introvert in a very public performing role. So
me too.
Yeah, the is to spend time away from people.
Yep.
I love them dearly.
Yep.
But I am in outward giving mode when I'm with other people. And it is inherent on me, it is my responsibility to make sure that I withdraw and refuel. And sometimes that's even from family. Like it's a lot less with family. So mostly it's enough that I'm with them. But even every now and then I just go, no, I just need to have a break from people, really. I just need to get out. I need to listen to good music. I need whatever. It doesn't matter, but I've just got to be away from people.
Yeah.
And I love people. Absolutely adore them. So it sounds weird, but that's just how I refuel.
No, it's not weird at all. It's interesting, isn't it? Because I'm an introvert as well, and I've chosen a career that requires me to be an extrovert.
Yes.
And I don't think I quite realised until COVID and lockdown that I actually really enjoyed being alone.
Yes.
I mean, it was awful that there was a global pandemic, and
Yes.
people were not okay. But I got to be a homebody for a period of time, and I really loved it, and it energised me.
Yes.
Yeah. Interesting, because there are some teachers, and I reckon a lot of charismatic principals would be extroverts, and
Yeah, possibly. It's impossible to know. I mean, most people who would see me work would go, "You're absolutely an extrovert."
right.
There's just no. It's only though if you would know me, that you would go, "Yeah, give me 3,000 people to talk to, and I don't have a problem."
Yeah.
Give me 3, and I'm like awkward very quickly,
Yeah.
But it's but you learn, right? Like you learn, and just like extroverts learn and introverts learn, and everyone, of course, is a different. It's a spectrum, and we all move along that spectrum. So I appreciate that, but by and large, when it comes to looking after myself, I have increasingly realised over the years that I do need to have some time alone.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we're down to 2. What are 2 reasons I and other aspiring leaders should become a principal? Why do it?
Well, the first thing I would kind of, I guess, say is that you shouldn't necessarily. I just think it's such a different role, and it does require you to think very differently than you do as a teacher.
Yeah.
It requires you to bear responsibility for other people who will expect things of you that you. It's just hard. Like the responsibility for. I was thinking that if I go on holidays, but a child in my community dies, I'm back. Like you never.
You're never off the clock.
No, and you don't want to be, right? Like so that's why it becomes so beholden on us to go, well, if you want to do this, well then do it well, but don't do it and then burn out. And you have to be able to kind of be grumpy about some of this stuff.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people who shouldn't be principals, and there's probably a lot of people who could be, who don't think they can, but it's a very different role, and it's not the same as teaching. And I know teachers go, oh yeah, you're not all teachers, but some teachers get very rude about principals. But I go, I have taught, I know what teaching is like, and I know the demands, and I've been in those roles. I go, this is a different job, and nothing actually prepares you for it than being in it. It's a lonely job. And it's a job where it's a really easy job for other people to criticise you. If you do get, I get relentlessly hurt by what people say and think, but you have to learn, if you want to do the job, you have to be not okay with getting hurt, but
like thicker skin type thing.
A little bit, but you also have to keep the soft heart, right? Because that's what you're good at this.
Yeah.
So it's really complicated.
Gosh, that's so complex.
I know. And what you don't want is someone who's in the position who's got a heart of stone, right? Because so much of what we're dealing with is just like, oh, sweetheart, let's talk through what you're doing here, or what's happened here or whatever. So I just kind of go, you don't have to do it. There are other great roles. If you're very comfortable being a teacher and you love it, then just be a teacher. You need good teachers, right? The other thing I would say about why would you do it is I go, there is no greater honour on earth than to be a principal. I look at it and I go, I am so blessed to. It's like being a secular priest. You get to walk alongside people in their lives through some of the most awful moments, some of the most wonderful moments, some of the just hardest moments. Like it's just an extraordinary privilege that I never, ever, ever, like, if I got fired tomorrow and they're like, that's it, you're done, I'd be like, I have won the lottery. Like, it was the best job ever, and I don't presume that it will happen forever. I just go, while it lasted, it was just magnificent, and I would do it again. I didn't know that at the time, I didn't set out going, I'm going to be a principal. But now I'm here, I'm like, I still can't believe my luck. Like, it's just an amazing job. But with it comes an enormous responsibility. There's a price you pay for leadership.
Yeah.
What
a beautiful way of describing your job. That's just lovely. That made me really excited, and I don't know, made my heart sing just listening to you talk about being a principal just then. Thank you. All right, we're down to one.
Yes.
Which is kind of an impossible question.
Okay.
But what is one key leadership quality that you embody that allows you to do your job well? And actually, before I throw to you, so we haven't met prior to today. And I was talking to Steve about you, and we've listened to you on podcasts and all that kind of stuff and listened to you speak, and we kind of decided that one key leadership quality that you embody would be compassion and being kind to others and kind of leading with that first in situations. So that's what we think about you as a leader.
Lovely. Thank you.
But what do you think is your number one key leadership quality that you need to do your job?
Okay, so that's kind of slightly two different questions.
Yeah.
So, I can't really tell you because I'm not that self-aware about.
I don't. What?
About,
You've just been beautifully self-aware for the last how many minutes? 57 minutes.
You know what I think? The attribute that I admire and want the most. Okay, how's that?
Yep, great.
What I'm conscious of is humility.
Yeah.
The reason why I just love humility. I mean, humility is such a weird word in a way, because people go, oh, gee, shucks, I'm not that good, and they think it's being humble, but that's actually false humility, right? That's going, actually, you are good, you've done your job for a long time or whatever. Not perfect, but you do it, whatever. So humility is actually, it's not boasting about stuff and going, because that's pride, like a weird pride. So humility is seeing things as they are. And I think one of the challenges, the longer that you're in the role, in any role, is you get defensive of the role, and you get defensive of your role in that position and what you've done. And so you can lose your curiosity, you can lose because kind of shame comes in, or you worry about how does it get seen or whatever. So the closest example I can have is like you've got little kids, is when a kid's learning how to walk and they fall over, natural part of it, and they just pick themselves up, they might cry, whatever, they dust themselves off, they keep going, but they keep going until they can learn how to walk, right? I fall over at my age, oh man, I could break my leg and I'll leap to my feet going, I'm fine, good, everything's good, right? I just am so embarrassed about the fact that I went over, right? And so I'm no longer curious about anything, I'm defensive. What I increasingly think is so important in leadership of any sort, but particularly in school communities, is the humility to always be learning and to always be questioning and always go, what have I missed here? What did I, what am I, if someone's acting a certain way, just because I can't see it doesn't mean there's not something there. Like, it's like looking at a river and there's a ripple in the river, and you go, well, I mean, I can't see anything. And you go, yeah, but there's a rock underneath, right? Like, we know that there's something causing that ripple. And just because I don't know what it is doesn't mean it's not there. There's 1,000 reasons why people don't share, they don't confide, they don't want the school to know this. The kid's done this, but we're not going to tell the school because the school will think this, There's 1,000 reasons why people act the way they act. And for me, it becomes so important that I never lose that humility to go, I don't know what's going on here. I don't understand. And maybe I don't ever get to know. Maybe that's not my right or my privilege or whatever. I just have to do the best that I can in the time that I've got given with these people.
You I think you need to write a book, Briony, because you've got so many beautiful nature metaphors and analogies that I think need to go into a book.
Maybe next year if I remain unemployed, it'll be fun.
Okay, humility.
Maybe, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it. So Michelle Croft said flexibility.
Yep.
My second guest, so humility.
Yeah.
Flexibility, humility. So I'm just going to munch on that leadership quality right now. Insert soundbite here. Nom, 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 nom.
Yeah.
And I'm going to absorb it into my being to help me in my journey to becoming the ultimate principal.
Yeah, you'll be magnificent. You'll be so good.
Thank you so much, Dr. Briony Scott. I so appreciate the time you've spent with me today. I love learning from you. Thanks for responding to my emails and LinkedIn messages
A little bit late, but thank you.
I was hassling you.
Thank you for being persistent. You can add that to your list as well. That's great.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's an absolute privilege.
That was Eat the Principles with Jem Kolber.